Alright, here we are with part 2 of the solo queue ranked efficiency. Or maybe I misspelled that wrong. No, I will just go with that. This is a chart, for those of you that probably didn't see the first one, about what characters, in my strong opinion, on a tier list, are the most optimal operators to bring when solo queuing and trying to have an impact in the game both before and after your death. Now, the chart might look a little wild to some of us. Keep in mind, this is not a competitive tier chart. This is a ranked solo queue chart, meaning that how can you have an impact with XYZ character? Like, how much of an impact can you have with an XYZ character while solo queuing in ranked? Okay? Just bear with me here. We're going to go over it. I know it looks crazy right now. Trust me, I know. Um, Starting with the recruit, much like the recruit on attack, you can bring an abundance of utility that regardless of your death, if you were to die early, you leave enough utility behind for your teammates to succeed. For example, uh, barbed wire and deployable shield, or maybe a deployable shield and proxies. The combinations are endless. Nonetheless, if you were to die, it'd be very much appreciated of you if you had put barbed wire on our staircases, so that way we hear them coming, or if you gave someone who's bunkering sight and like while you went to roam, you gave them a deployable shield. So that way you can go off and do your own thing and yet still had an impact on the round nonetheless. Moving on to the next one is Mute. Other than his predecessor, Mazi, he can set it and forget it and always get value out of his utility, whether it's denying a wall, denying drones, or even, countering people like Dokkaebi Deimos. So regardless of your early death, God forbid, you still have an impact on the round. Castle, one of the most underrated but really, really appreciated characters, at least from my strong opinion. Castling all the perimeter of the objective, not the doors, like the windows that lead to outside that typically attackers like to punch or put a bullet hole in to get a quick little easy kill. Your teammates would appreciate if you were to do that almost every round, especially on maps like Oregon, top floor, like kids' bedroom. If you castle the double door, castle the kids' window, castle the games window, and then the last one could be like attic window or maybe even trophy door or master door to outside. Just by you doing that, aside from the fact that he gets two proxies, which could also go on like staircases and whatnot, just for you doing that, you make the room feel so comfortable to where like if you were to die accidentally early, at least you know that the possibility of your other teammates dying instantly to something that they was probably out of their control, like a wall bang from outside or something like that, it's covered. You did it. You did really good. All right, so these are solo queue. This is a solo queue self-sufficiency ranked tier list. Valkyrie, obvious reasons. You're leaving cameras around the game, so when you do die, you still have a voice. You have a voice in the game to say, hey, look, I got a guy right here on yellow ping. He's flanking you, bro. You might want to look at this. Or vice versa. Hey, you can flank. Come up these stairs. I'm literally watching the guy have his back to you. You can kill him. Echo, both being alive and dead has an effect because much like Valkyrie, you're relaying information. But say you were to go do your own thing and solo queue and rat in the basement and like run away or something. In a clutch scenario where it's the last 15 seconds of a round, 10 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever, you can clutch up without having to get into a gunfight by simply echoing the opponent. Like, you win the game. That's a win condition. Which I guess we can cover in another video of what that actually means and how you can start putting that into your game, implementing that into your game. Goyo, uh, much like Castle, in my strong opinion, can be placed on barricades so that way you don't have to manually set them off, which is the only way to really get an effect out of them. So an example of this is Canal Basement, my personal favorite use of Goyo. If you put one on Trench Door, if you put one on Locker's Window, if you put one on Scuba Window, and then the last one is of your choice. I usually put it on the yellow stairs, which is like the last thing to cover, which is the only manual one if you put it on the stairs. But when they break these windows and doorways, they automatically detonate, like automatically. And that's 20 seconds of your time, well, their time. In case you didn't know, Goyo's canisters last 20 seconds. That's 20 seconds of their time that they have to now sit there and just like wait. But that's also 20 seconds for you to react to that situation. Say you're like across the map, or say you're down the hallway from the Goyos and you hear it blow up, you now have a choice. Do I acknowledge that and now get ready for them to walk in? Or do I go, oh, okay, you're coming in from there? Let me go up and around here, make a hole above the floor, and look down at you so when the fire's gone, I punish you for that. There's so many possibilities, but nonetheless, a very impactful character to have when you're solo queuing and don't want to rely on teammates for information. Um, Malusi, kind of like Goyo, but instead of putting it on doorways and barricades, you put it around the doorways and barricades. So when they walk in, two things happen. They could either destroy it with a grenade, which is a sound cue and tells you that they're coming anyways, or when they walk through it, is a sound cue and tells you that they're coming. And if you put these on like very strategical positions in which it's all their entry points, a staircase, like not the bottom of the staircase, we're talking about like the middle or top of it, so that way you can hear the early detonation of it and you have a heads up before they could actually see you, opposed to putting it at the bottom of the stairs where they can kill you before even coming down and then they come down and just break it anyways. Um, so yeah, Malusi would be that solo queue factor. Um, Azami, it's a tricky one. I did want to move her because, much like Legion, you kind of got to be alive to get the most use out of your Kiba barriers because they regenerate. But I will say though, you get at least 2 or 3 off before you die, and if you were to die, at least you left 3 barricade, like in a way castle. It's kind of like a castle. At least you left 3 concrete barriers around, which yeah, they can be destroyed still, but someone else can utilize that, if not your barbed wire that you put down. Aruni gates, for obvious reasons. I mean, Aruni is just, she literally blocks the whole door digitally opposed to physically like Castle. So your teammates, I didn't add that, but basically like don't want to castle doors in most cases because like when it comes to your teammates coming back to site, you block them off and now they have to rip it down. Aruni doesn't do that. She doesn't punish her teammates for putting it wherever she wants. So you can put it on whatever doors, doorways, and windows you want, and your teammates can just traverse in and out. That helps with solo queue for sure. She also has barbed wire. Maestro, much like Echo, which I guess I'll put them next to each other. Upon you dying early, you still have an impact on the round, and you can actively use your cameras to relay information. Uh, in my strong opinion, this is the S tier category. All right, this is like characters that more often than not you want to bring because they will always have an impact on the round, regardless of your death case. Um, this A tier is a little bit less than that, and some of these arguably could be up there on S tier, but we'll pick and choose as we go here because I kind of just slapped it together a little bit. But I gave it some thought. Don't get me wrong, but like it could be adjusted. The problem with Clash not being fully self-sufficient is that yes, she can put it down now and use it to shoot, but unless you bring someone like Jaeger, Wamai, or Rooney to help you defend against grenades, Zofia charges, etc., you're kind of going to lose that shield at some point, especially if you're trying to get aggressive by shooting people. So that's why she's kind of the A tier and not S tier, because she kind of needs teammates to be the best she can be. Same thing with Mira. Ash counters her, Twitch counters her, Callie counters her. So because of that, you need Mute to do his job and counter those twitches. You need Jaeger to do his job and counter the Ash charges and the fucking Callies. So that's why they're kind of a little bit not on the S tier because you still technically need someone to help you. Legion, um, we can move him to S tier because both him and Azami are basically the same thing. That like yes, you regenerate over time, but what you leave behind can be used by your teammates to help them win the round. So we'll move him to S tier. Ela, damn. You know what? Elo goes S tier, and these two come B tier. Because, technically speaking, because they regenerate, you can't always get the max use of it. So you'll always be somewhere in the middle, if not like almost to useless if you die early. Whereas Ela, she can just and walk the fuck away, and when you hear boom, you go, oh, the Ela mine went off. So we'll put her there. Fenrir, the reason why I won't put him S tier is because unfortunately for Fenrir, they nerfed him to where you have to keep turning on and off which ones you want to prioritize. So, in a way, Fenrir is no better than someone who brings proximity alarms because he only can activate two, much like, let's say, Wamai bringing proxies can only activate two as well. So, there's technically better operators that could do what his job does and better. Because at the end of the day, in most scenarios in ranked solo queue, people aren't swinging off of your Fenrirs when they go off. They just go, oh shit, I hear we going off down the hallway. They're coming. So they're kind of just using it like proxy alarms anyways. So he's kind of here. Denari is kind of a lesser version of Aruni and Capkin. The thing with Denari is that he's kind of a high IQ character in the sense that like the positioning in which you put them has to be very specific and niche to where you asked Mute to put jammers around so they don't find it and destroy it. Um, because they will destroy it. People, it's a bright ass fucking laser. Like they're gonna look at it and go, yeah, I'm just gonna grenade that, or I'm just gonna Twitch drone that, or Flores drone that. So Denari is in somewhat of the A tier. Not to mention his guns are kind of lackluster, but that's subjective to the person. Capkin, technically an S tier, because if you do get a kill from the grave, I mean, you did your job, right? Um, I don't want to put him S tier though, because I feel like he doesn't bring that much value to the team. Because there's only so many doors in a given map that like people sometimes forget. But for the most part, they're kind of like out there. Like Capkins are kind of like out there to where like you're gonna see it and you're gonna most likely shoot it. Same thing with Frost Mats. Um, I know some of you are looking at Doc being at D tier while Thunderbird is A tier, and the reasoning for that is kind of the premise of what we've been talking about this whole time. If you die as Doc, who are you gonna heal? If you die as Thunderbird, solo queue, you at least left some healing behind for your teammates to capitalize on and still get the health that they're requesting for. So, in retrospect, in a competitive setting where there's coordination and discipline, and you're not just running around mindlessly, uh, Doc is better than Thunderbird. Okay, um, but some of the trade-offs is that he gets barbed wire as a secondary gadget, and she gets a shield as a secondary gadget, which, depending on the person, is arguably better than the barbed wire. But that's bias, right? Like, cause it's situational, and what situations you like to put yourself in. But the fact of the matter is that yes, if you do die, you can still hear your teammates, and Doc can't do that. Azami, we just explained Azami earlier, and Legion, that yes, they have utility that they can leave behind. However, it's regenerative, so if you don't get the most, if you're not alive long enough to get the most out of it, it won't be used. Um, these characters right here, Jaeger and Wamai, kinda don't get use from their utility. Sure, it might catch a couple flashbangs and grenades here and there, but the real premise of bringing these people is to protect other people's gadgets. Like, for example, Thunderbird's shield. For example, Maestro's cameras. Or maybe Malusi's devices. Just going Jaeger to go Jaeger and just slapping them anywhere. I'd rather go, like, fucking Pulse or something where I can guarantee a kill with a C4 below or something. You know what I mean? Like these people are niche because they require you to protect other people's gadgets in the event that they bring something to protect. So it's kind of like they're not the greatest solo queue characters. Um, Solo queue. characters, not competitive characters, solo queue characters. Cade and Bandit, while they're good in their own right, Cade can get the hatches. That's kind of an annoyance for attackers to have to deal with. Bandit can probably bandit trick the walls. The reason why they're not considered like S or A tier is because in most scenarios, people are grenading your wall, which now you have to ask Jaeger, hey Jaeger, can you protect me while I bandit trick? So now that's no longer a solo queue feature, right? You kind of gotta like ask other people for favors. And in the event that like let's say you throw Cade down and now you're asking Tubarao, hey, can we get a Tubarao to trick the wall? I put the Cades down for you. That's not solo queue anymore, is it? So that's kind of why they're on the lower bracket here. Rook, the reason why he's kind of above Doc but also below Thunderbird is because it requires your teammates to acknowledge the fact that they want to pick up the armor at the beginning of the round. And yes, you could say, oh, they have to acknowledge to pick up Thunderbird's heals. But in the heat of moments, late game, people are more likely to run past a Thunderbird than they are to run to your armor that you set down in the middle of the room, in the middle of gunfire, and try to pick up that armor and do the animation. So yes, I kind of contradicted myself there with the sense that like people have to acknowledge your utility, but it's much easier to walk past a Thunderbird that's going to auto heal you than to run past the armor that I now have to put my gun away for to pick it up late game in case I forgot to pick it up early. So that's why he's above Doc but below Thunderbird because you could die and you still technically left something behind, but that doesn't always mean they're going to pick it up or they're going to acknowledge it. You understand? Okay. Mozzie is the lesser version of Mute because he doesn't have the same proximity as Mute in the sense that the effectiveness. Uh, Most people put Mozzie Pest like on the corners of doorways, and there's a little trick which I wish I would add an example here to you. Maybe I'll do more advanced, in-depth like videos like this later. But Mozzie Pests can be jumped over. Like they're very easy to jump over. If the doorway, for example, let's say this is the doorway. This is my phone. And you put a Mozzie Pest here, or you put a Mozzie Pest here, right? Let's just say it's here for the sake of the argument. It's here. I will go with a drone here and just jump this way and go there, cause like the proximity is about this wide. When it comes, this is a terrible analogy, but the proximity is about this wide, right? It covers like a little circle around the side in which you put it on. So I'll just jump this side, or if you put it here, I'll just jump this side. So it's like he doesn't do what Mute does as strongly. And then sure, you could put it on staircases and whatnot. Another tip with staircases is that most staircases have a handrail. You just put the drone on the handrail and drive right past it. You could kind of do that with Mute Jammers too, but Mute Jammers have a more chance of catching that motherfucker before he jumps over the railing. So that's why Mozzie's kind of here and not here. And not to mention that Mute's more than just drone catching, he's also wall denial. Mozzie's just drone catching. And literally your whole kit relies on you getting value of catching drones. Mute's value as a solo queue, you can make the rotates with your shotgun. You have a C4, much like Mozzie does, and you also have a secondary SMG. Mozzie just has an SMG and a C4. So yeah, you be the judge there on that one. Warden, very niche operator. If they're not going Ying or Glaz or executing sight with 1 2 3 and then like flashing everything, you kind of don't get much use out of him other than a shotgun and a C4 or deployable shield. So if that's the case, you may as well just go recruit. If you're looking to just bring a shotgun and C4 or deployable shield because he could do the same thing and more. Um, he just doesn't get the fancy goggles. Scopos. Scopos brings no other value to the team other than being annoying and running around and teleporting when they start to chase you and close in on you. So keep in mind this is a solo queue self-sufficiency video about how you can still impact the round with your utility opposed to just your weaponry. That's all Scopos brings is a gun and being annoying that he can teleport. Vigil Same thing as Scopos, much like in the early days before we could teleport. He's just good at buying time and making the attackers want to chase him around the building without tracking him. He can counter Deimos. He can counter Lion Scans. He can counter Grim. Yes, in case you didn't know that, some fun facts. But that's really it. Like you don't leave anything behind, especially if you die. So it's kind of like, you know what I mean? Like what are you leaving us behind? Um Pulse, very very S tier operator in my opinion. But the motherfucker brings nothing but the chance to kill someone. And in the event that you don't kill someone, you brought nothing. So that's why he's down here. Thorn, let's be for real. Thorn traps, if you die to a thorn trap, yeah. So Cavi is much like Vigil, but I would say she's less than Vigil because the only thing she counters is Jackal. Vigil counters Lion Scans, Deimos tracking, and Grims. Cavi just counters her footsteps being tracked. And only one person can sniff out feet. So she's kind of really like, shit, there should be another tier here lower than that. And when it comes to interrogating people, don't even get me started. If you try to interrogate somebody, I mean, you can interrogate people in ranked. I guess this is like subjective to the rank in which we're talking about. But I am a champion player, um, a high one at that. And I'm gonna tell you right now, you're not interrogating 9 times out of 10. There's always a teammate following up on that trade, if not like flanks being watched. So Cavi's not getting much use other than the fact that she has a shotgun for her like rotation making, hatch openings, and maybe some proxies to leave behind her teammates. But be for real, if you're going Cavi for the proxies, just go Fenrir. You know what I mean? Like at least he brings proxies and a bulletproof camera. You know what I mean? Where she just brings proxies. Solus is somewhat of a lesser version. No, I wouldn't even say lesser version because she's the technology version of Pulse, whereas Pulse is the organic version. He sees heartbeats. He sees where people literally are. She sees where people want to be. And what that means is if you see a drone traversing, let's say you're in a different room or you're below or above, whatever, and you see a drone moving somewhere, you get like foresight as to what they want to do and what they're about to clear. But like, what really, you know what I'm saying? Like, other than seeing claymores outside before you hop out, she doesn't really bring much to the table. Yeah, she has proxies and a shotgun for rotation making, but like, there's so many better ops that you could pick over her if that's what you're trying to like bring to the table. Um, and so yeah, like she gets to see ahead of the future, if you will. Like she gets to see what you want to do, and he gets to see what you're actually doing. That's a good way to look at it. Now that I think about it. So like Solus is especially with all the nerfs they gave her. They nerfed it to the ground too. Oryx. Oryx's premise is to counter Montaigne. I'm gonna just say it like that. Yeah, he can counter Blackbeard too and Blitz and all those people, but Oryx was made to counter the annoyance of Montaigne, and that's it. Oh yeah, let's not forget he can climb hatches. But Ubisoft has a weird way of designing maps in which hatch climbing is not very advantageous. Um, Especially when they hear you go hut, hut, like you know what I'm saying? Like they hear you doing that, and they're just gonna go get a load of this guy. Like, like bro, you know what I'm saying? They're just gonna kill you. Alibi. Unless you have the elite skin, nobody's shooting those clones. At least at a higher rank level. Um, the lower tiers of ranks, sure, because they don't even know the difference between operator models yet. But once you understand that alibi clones are very stagnant and they don't move, and in most cases they're in the most obvious areas, you're not shooting them. She brings nothing else but a secondary bailiff for her little rotations and hatch popping, some proxies, whatever. We already kind of spoke about Doc before we got here. Doc brings no value to the team unless he stays alive the whole round. And even when you choose to stay alive the whole round, you have to now ask your teammate, hey bro, peek me real quick, let me heal you. And God forbid he over peaks and dies, or you die because you're just sitting there with your stim, you get no value out of your utility. So, come on, you know? What else we got here? We got Tuberal, which he literally relies on a bandit or a Cade being on the board. So back to the whole self-sufficiency thing. If we're not self-sufficient, sorry, if you're not solo queue, Jesus Christ, if you're not teaming up with someone, you get no value out of Tuberal. Like you would have to ask your teammates, hey bro, can you put those bandits down? Hey bro, can you put those Cades down? Not mute, by the way. You would never mute trick you would never Tuberal trick a mute, by the way. I hope you don't do that. Tachanka and Smoke are arguably the S tier operators of Plant Denial. S tier operators. Um, However, much like Doc, if you die early in the game, or if you die, right before the plant goes down, what plant are you denying? You know what I mean? Like, these characters heavily rely on you having a team. So in a way, you could kind of say that this chart would be flipped. Some of them, not all of them. Like Cavi would sit right the fuck there, but like you would flip this chart, and that would be the S tier operators and Oryx. Yeah. Hold on, maybe not all of them, but some of these people would be flipped on the chart. Smoke and Tachanka, for example, would be up there. This guy would probably be like A tier, B tier, um, in a competitive, coordinated setting. But for these guys, nah, not really, not really. Um, and I think that wraps up the defense side, which I find to be shorter than the other one. The first video was 40 minutes. This one was 26, or now 27. Um, so yeah, we wrapped it up there. If you guys have any other comments, questions, concerns as to some of these characters in the tier list, I'm more than welcome to answer some of those, if not all of them. Um, but we're gonna wrap this one up here and see if we even bother with the competitive side here. I think we'll do it just for the sake of, right? Why not? Um, I just feel like making a coordinated video is complicated because there's so many like situational opinions. You know what I mean? Like you could arguably say that every character can be like sophisticated and be used at like a higher degree. So I feel like this is more of a video for newer players trying to understand the game and maybe just solo queue champions that want to get the most out of their characters. That's what these videos are for. All right, and I just decided to do this at 8:48 a.m. because I said fuck it, why not? I hope you guys enjoyed, seriously, and have a good rest of your day. Peace. Stop recording.